Salute, salute, salute. What it do? It's your boy Rain, that ATP Combat Media. Shout out to all my subscribers. If this is your first time watching this content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit your bell icon so you get an alert whenever this content drops. So is the mathing? As we all know, next week we've got PBC's kicking off their first event with Amazon Prime. It's going to be a pay-per-view event. Some last-minute changes have been made. They removed They removed Tim Tszyu. Oh my goodness! They removed Keith Thurman out of the Tim Tszyu fight and replaced him with one of the fights that were on the card with Sebastian Fundora, who's going to be upgrading the fight Tim Tszyu. Way more interesting fight, right? We've already discussed this to a certain degree. It's now going to be a unification fight, being that the vacant WBC title is going to be on the line, as well as Tim Tszyu's WBO title. Way more interesting fight, in my opinion. I think a more competitive fight, in my opinion. Even though in some ways you could say that Keith Thurman would have been the more competitive, being that he probably would have boxed more, and Tim Tszyu would have had a harder time finding Keith Thurman. Fundora is going to be standing there. He's going to meet him there in the middle of the ring. Fundora doesn't have a style where he's going backwards. He's stepping forward. He likes to fight inside. Now, although Tim Tszyu really gives up reach and height to Fundora, being that Fundora stepping in the ring at 6.5 feet tall. In comparison to Tim Tszyu coming in like 5'8", and Fundora comes in with like an 80-inch arm reach. But unfortunately, I would say Fundora doesn't like to, at least in his past fights, doesn't really utilize his those physical attributes that he have, his height and them long arms. He seems to make the fight a short fight. He fights on the inside, which, if he does come in there fighting that way against Tim Tszyu, I can't see it being, even though Fundora obviously he's been having a very successful career. The only loss he took was that last fight he had against Brian Mendoza, where Brian Mendoza ultimately knocked him out. But once again, that's a cost of fighting inside that way, not using what God's giving you. So maybe Fundora may change that. If Fundora decides to fight long, use that reach, fight tall, force Tim Tszyu to make adjustments, force Tim Tszyu to find his way on the inside to make some things happen, then this fight becomes that much more competitive. If he fights that way, to me, I would say it's a new way of him fighting, and I question as to whether or not that's going to be, do you want to try something new and quite possibly the biggest fight of his life at this point, his first title shot, and him being able to come in and be a unified champion? Or does he go back to what he's used to doing, which is fighting on the inside? I think that's an interesting, it's going to be an interesting question to get answered that night, because part of me says don't experiment, right? Stick to what you know. But at the same time, the other part of me says Tim Tszyu, that's Tim Tszyu's world right there. If you choose to go toe-to-toe with him and fight him on the inside that way, you're giving up some ground to Tim Tszyu. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes together. But is the mathing in reference to this height, this adjustment that Tim Tszyu has to make on 10 days, on a 10 days notice, because Keith Thurman had that bicep injury, and having to completely bring in, two new sparring partners, really having to crunch in and make a whole new game plan for this guy. Tim Tszyu can't think that he's going to approach this fight the way he fought Keith Thurman. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So is Tim Tszyu going to be able to properly execute without a full camp for Sebastian Fundora? Now, this also speaks to Tim Tszyu's grind and his grit and who he really is. He doesn't turn down any fights. He doesn't turn down any smokes. He turns down no smoke, right? And that activity that he's been in for like the past year is going to play a big part in this as well. He's not somebody who's cold, right? He's a fighter who stays active and stays busy, so he's sharp. It's going to be a real good fight, I think. We're gonna see, obviously, but I'll tell you what, this becomes a way more pay-per-view worthy event. I'm going to pay for it. Before, I'm not going to lie, I was probably going to go to a friend's house or hit a bar or something. I don't know what I was going to do, but I wasn't going to spend no $80 on this pay-per-view. This makes it way more interesting. This fight is way more competitive, and it's a fight that counts now. Whereas the fight with Keith Thurman was for nothing, right? It was a catchweight fight. It was just for bragging rights. This actually has titles on the line. The WBC vacant title goes on there, so something for Tim Tszyu as well. Puts a lot more vested interest for both fighters to put their best performance on. I think it's going to be a great fight. You guys, let me know what you think, though. Is this mathing? Is this height and reach and the way that what Fundora brings to the ring, is this something that really Tim Tszyu should have had a full camp for? And is Tim Tszyu going to pay the ultimate cost for taking this fight and being the warrior that he is, really not complaining and fighting whoever you put in front of him? But would he have been wrong to say, listen, I want a camp to prepare for the guy I'm fighting against? This guy right here is a big puncher, you know what I mean? Don't let that Brian Mendoza fight fool you guys. Don't let that fight fool you guys, because if you watch that fight, you'll know that Sebastian was really dominating that fight. He was winning that fight clearly on the cards. I believe the judges' cards had him all, except for one judge had him down one round. Not down one round, should I say. Had one round that Brian Mendoza won, but the other two judges had it like 6, because I think that was in a 6th round. 6th round that happened. So I think it was like 5-zip. Pretty much going into that. And Fundora, don't forget about the beating he put on Erickson Lubin, right? So these are different things that we have to take into consideration. But you guys let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is the mathing? Is this going to be a competitive fight? Is this a bad fight for Tim Tszyu stylistically? Is this not the kind of fight that Tim Tszyu wants to get in with 10 days notice? A lot on the line. But let me know. Remember, if this is your first time, remember to hit that subscribe button, hit your like, hit the thumbs up on this when you guys come in. Let's get this on the algorithm, get this out there. And on that note, at this point, we out.